Welcome to Sisters in Arms. I'm Kerrie Ann Claire.
And I'm Renee Gagne. Together we serve as a Second Amendment resource for our community.
And this is part 2 of meeting Gabby Franco. Again, she's the first time female shooter to represent Venezuela for the Olympics. So stay tuned. Welcome back, Gabby, to part 2. So we left off at the last time. We were just about to start talking about your book, and I know we can mention it. And give everybody an understanding of the amazing things that you've been doing, including writing a book. So what's the name of your book?
So my book is called Troubleshooting, Mastering Your Pistol Marksmanship.
And you are definitely the person to be able to write upon that, for sure.
Well, I didn't want to make a book like a regular book that you sit down and read and digest information. I want it to be, which that's what it is, a manual that you can take to the range. You can review it all the time. And going to what I was saying on our first episode, that you go to the range and you know the technique and you know where you're supposed to be, but it's often difficult to follow up with that. And recognizing that, especially as a firearm instructor, I thought, okay, I want something that people just put in the range bag, and every time they feel something they need to fix, they can go,
They
to
have
the
like
book
a binder
and refer to it.
Yeah, I love it.
That's great.
There was also something I happened to come across, and it was how gun control creeps in. And I think it was an article or something, and I found that pretty interesting. Can you kind of elaborate on that?
Well, it's like everything. Often we ignore what is not right there in our faces. It can be close. Some people say, oh, somebody's lying to you. Somebody's lying to you. But until you see it, unfortunately, that's when we are paying attention to those things. And often by that time, it's too late. And the same thing is with how gun control, how socialism creeps in our lives. We think I had a very good friend who was very pro-gun and everything. And he used to say, oh, they keep telling us that they're going to go for our guns, but that's never happened. That never happens. And I came back to him and I said, listen, you say that from a perspective, from a citizen that you go out and you go to the range and have fun, come back home and live out your life. But there are organizations out there like Women's for Gun Rights and other organizations who are battling the battle, fighting the battle behind the scenes. And that's the behind the scenes that you don't see. And the behind the scenes of those laws, those proposals that are outrageous. And it's imperative that citizens be aware of it, that the fight for people's rights, and I'm not saying it as saying like, oh, the fight for people's rights, but it's a battle worldwide. It's not, we're so fortunate in the United States that we have the Constitution, a strong Constitution that many still try to tear apart. But that's the only thing that separate us from the rest of the world. And so it creeps in by letting your guards down, saying, oh, well, I do have already my rifle. I don't care if they ban rifles right now. But what it happens, and as proven in every aspect of life, the more you keep your guards down, the more you let those kind of ideologies come in, you will never get them back. It's extremely difficult. There's no country around the world that you can say, oh, yeah, they prohibit us from owning firearms, and now we do. That now we can. It's almost impossible, unheard of.
Right. They've never taken guns away and then said, oh, you can have them back. Never.
And I was doing one of my papers I did for my bachelor's in psychology. I came across a infographic from California. And, infographers are kind of pretty, the way they present the information, very colorful, very, a lot of images and graphics and all that stuff. And there was one that caught my attention. They wanted to present in a more triangular way like this, saying that the top, and I'm just going to say numbers because I don't remember exactly, but it was like that, let's say the top 10% had 90% of the firearms in California, right? And so from the get-go, just from seeing it, from the uneducated eye in the firearms industry, they say, wow, those are probably, they're hoarding guns, or these are millionaires who have all the money to buy guns. But, again, going from my background in Venezuela, and how you can see how the trends go. What it is a generational issue, that there are probably those individuals were the ones who at one time were young and they were allowed to own firearms. Of course, they are growing older. And then these new generations who are living now, who have so many restrictions, they cannot even, in California, talk about firearms. It's a taboo. They have to whisper if they have a firearm. I mean, it's crazy. It's ridiculous. It's almost like they live in fear of speaking out. And so these individuals, right, they don't have those rights. And so they have fear of firearms. So it's almost how they presented this information that is so deceiving. And it creates a false sense of reality, right? When in truth is that they are moving the needle, so less and less people get to know and understand what is the Second Amendment, because it's less people are exercising their rights. Why would they even protect it?
Right.
See? And to me, it's a very important issue that most people just ignore those things. Oh, not a big deal. I'm like, you don't see it. You don't see the big picture. The big picture is having less and less people be educated in things that matter. So they won't care about protecting it.
I think you hit the nail on the head with these new the younger kids. You have perspective that these young American kids never can even fathom.
Right.
You came from a country where you had this happen in your country. So you come here and you can totally see. You're not looking through rose-colored glasses. You're looking through reality and what can happen, what is happening slowly, very quietly, very slowly, very methodical.
And of course, I'm just talking about firearms itself, but going to what you're saying, if you talk to a Venezuelan, and I'm not gonna put very big numbers, but a 30-year-old, 30, this is an adult. That's adulthood. Okay, this person have lived, has worked, have seen the world you would expect. A 30-year-old Venezuelan does not remember what was living in a Venezuela with grocery stores that you could select. I lived it. That you could select which, butter you want, which cheese you want. No, I'm not even talking about, just general stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't exist nowadays. And they have lived most of their life. Like, this is a 30-year-old person who lived in Venezuela now. And I can go even further, like 35. So imagine, that's in general terms. And obviously here in the United States, I'm not going to say that's what we're going, but at least in the farms, and that's what many states, like example, California, possibly New York, you talk to these individuals and they don't understand it. You talk about the Second Amendment, they don't grasp it. How would they?
Right.
How would they if they were not allowed? They were not given the opportunity to understand
they want to believe it either. I don't think they truly can comprehend, and they don't want to believe that this can happen. Well, look what happened in Venezuela.
Right.
And they're like, no, that's not true. Yes, yes, it is true. Right. And that's what you get a lot. And it's, you get then this back and forth argument, and you're like, okay, well, we're going to,
but you know what?
Can you do what I'm doing?
Right.
And you know what? I cannot, to be honest, I cannot even blame them. You know what? Because Cubans used to do the same thing for us Venezuelans. And Venezuelans didn't believe it. Now, what is the difference? Which is very interesting to your point. That back then we didn't have the information. We don't have access to rapid information that I can go right now on the internet and read about, communism, about, taking people's guns away and how they were wiped out societies, right? You have to go to books back in the day. Now we can do that.
Now it's
in any American. So that is the difference, that even though in like a human behavior, we tend to ignore even warnings, right? When your parents say, don't do that because that could happen to you, you're like, oh, no, that's not going to happen to me. Boom, happens to you. Why do we ignore it? Because that's part of a human behavior. It's not immediate, so I don't care about it.
Right.
And
Or
that's the interesting
personally.
part about it.
Yeah, or it's not affecting me, so I'm not going to think about it.
Right.
You know, and until, now we're, bringing up Massachusetts, until something, egregious happens here regarding whatever, and it's attacking you personally, and all of a sudden you're like, what do you mean I can't do that? Then you wake up. This is where we're trying to get everybody to wake up before that happens. Because if we all took that stance and we all went to the State House and we all started meeting our reps and our congressmen and congresswomen and introduced ourselves before it became an issue, now they know who we are,
Well, they're crafty at it too.
Yeah.
You think about it like gun control, like just that term alone, it sounds like something you might want to have something of, right? Like I feel like I would, if I know too much now, but if I try to like remove myself from what I know, and I think, okay, you're not a firearm instructor, you're not a leader of a chapter, like try to think like these people are thinking. And I totally
Right.
gun control, it's safe. We want safe communities.
It seems like it. They like those
Yeah,
names.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So when you start breaking it down, what it actually is doing, it's affecting every single part of gun ownership except for the criminals, except for,
Right.
which is the only part that keeps our communities not safe.
Right.
So it's tough. It's really, you have to be very calm and patient. And sometimes when you're talking to the, someone who's opposite of what you're thinking of your stance, it's difficult because you have to set yourself back from what we know, because
Right.
we just, you have to spoon feed them slowly, because
we were ignorant once too. You
Right.
know what I mean? We started at one point where we didn't even understand what 2A meant.
right. None of this stuff is innate.
Yeah.
We're not born with any of this. All of this is learned. So,
And that's why it's so important. I tell people when they say, oh, what could we do? I said, listen, the first thing that you can do is teach your children history. Teach your children about, our founding fathers. Make them understand where did we come from as a country, and what was the foundation of the country and everything. And I think that's what we're also lacking, not that we, for example, don't know it, or many Americans don't know it, is forgotten.
Right.
You see,
Right.
it gets forgotten into we're so busy. There's so many other things and those things that you probably learn in school. Like to me, all is new. So I'm fascinated by it because I had to dig and get that information from it and study it, because I didn't grow up here. I didn't go to school here. So I had to put myself into learning more about the founding fathers, where as individuals and mindset, to understand how they come up with these amazing ideas. It was an experiment. And it fascinates me that, for example, in most countries around the world, you have one liberator, right? In America, we don't have one, right? We have a group of men, which is great. They debated, they fought, they argue to create this amazing experiment. But for instance, in Venezuela, we had Simón Bolívar. He was our liberator, or libertador, that I would say in Spanish. And he, believe it or not, he was a staunch a fan, just to say that word, of George Washington. He studied. He actually was a wealthy man, and he left everything to liberate Venezuela from the Spaniards. And he followed a lot of, Washington and everything, but he thought their Americans' idea was too much, if that makes sense. So he went to the old idea of more centralized government. And I always wonder what would have happened if he would have followed his guts and probably follow those ideas that he thought, or those men he really thought they were amazing thinkers. And I think that's sometimes we follow into that. that we have these ideas that, defending myself, or those people who are not in within the firearms industry, or they're not gun owners, that they have that, they see the idea, they see the, there's some truth behind it. But then deep inside, they go into a more comfortable place, which is the idea of, no, maybe people should not have firearms at all, not seeing the big picture, that will never happen. And it's always better to have a educated, armed society, no matter what.
Right. Agreed.
It's just, it blows my mind because it just, these things happen, but to hear it from you, it just like, I can't even imagine. I can't,
You know what I was thinking when you talked about generations? I think, my generation, when I was a child, my dad and my uncles and my grandfather hunted, and a lot of the food that we ate came from them hunting. And we had to do it that way. We didn't have the money necessarily all the time to buy food in a grocery store. So my children now, their dad doesn't hunt. I don't hunt. Not because I'm against it. I would love to learn. It's just one more thing, right? One more thing to do. But they don't understand the necessity of hunting because they didn't live it, where I had a full belly at night because my dad was able to hunt. So,
well, yeah,
when I'm long gone, my children are older and they have children and they're long gone, like the whole hunting thing, it will be lost, at least for us in this family. And I can imagine that is like that in millions of families in America.
Yeah.
Right. And I can tell you that I know friends who, well, in Venezuela, there's a lot of, how you say, challenges to find food. I have some friends who have been able to do a few things to hunt or fish, and just having those skills, especially fishing, has saved them to put food on the table. And, hunting is not only with firearms, they can just do archery. And that's, because it's so difficult to find firearms in Venezuela. And so they use other means, but just having that skill, hunting skills, is like, they have saved many Venezuelans too.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, I also went onto your website, and it looks like you have a long list of things that you volunteer your time for. I'm like, wow. So one thing I see here is something, wives of the Special Forces, community with Special Forces. Can you explain that a little bit? Because that's interesting.
Well, that was a training. That was one training I did. That was when I used to be with Remington Arms, and I had the opportunity to train the wives of Special Forces. I do volunteering in anything I can, to be honest. I volunteer with the USO as a military family. The military and military families in general are always in my thoughts and my prayers with everything. There are many deployed, despite what politicians say. Oh, Harry said that there's nobody out deployed, but no, there are many people deployed. So I volunteer with them. There's another organization, Daggers, Black Dagger Hunt. They also offer hunting for veterans, especially many who are disabled, and I encourage anybody to support them. So yeah, I volunteer anywhere I can. I think it's a way to, in my mind, it's a way to give back the amazing things I have gotten from this country.
Aww.
And from the community, from everything. So, yeah.
So before you were a mom, you did Top Shot, but since then you became a mom. So what does your son think of mom being an Olympic shooter and
famous and
amazing? I mean, he must think it's very cool.
He just wants me to feed him and put him in bed and play with him. It's funny because I don't talk much about it with him. He knows that I go to the range and I'm ready to go. He's like, Mama, where are you going? I'm gonna go practice. And I like to promote that to him, practice in general, because he has his sports. But I always find it funny that my husband and I, my husband hunts, he's so much into his rifles. We go compete together sometimes, but I am always out and competing and dry firing and practicing. And often we ask our son, like, hey, let's go to the range. He's like, hey. So it's the irony of life that here we are, the parents so much into guns, and my son is like, I don't care. But to me, that's okay. I still teach him the safety rules of firearms, making sure that he knows what they are, that they're not toys, what to do if he finds them. And eventually, hopefully, he'll like to do that with us. And if he doesn't, I'm okay.
Yep. Yep.
I love it. I love it.
So what do you, just a real quick, we have probably 9 minutes left.
Yeah.
Back to armed women for gun rights in Virginia, where you're from. How is it when you speak with legislators? Like it must be nice that you have this background that you can, bring to the table with you when you're speaking with them.
When we meet with them in DC, sometimes you know how it is. Sometimes some of them, they listen to you, they understand, and others who are not too fond about people having firearms, they simply ignore it. And it's a sight to be seen, like I wish everybody could see how they react, how they interact with us. But I think it's an important thing to do, because not because they dismiss you, even if you're telling the truth, even if you're showing the importance of protecting our rights and all that. I think everybody should do it.
Yeah. So there's a lot of people that watch the show, and a lot of people that are gun owners and non-gun owners, which is great. And as we move on with our episodes, we realize that we're also educating the public, in their capacity at home, and how comfortable and maybe approach it. So somebody that's interested in guns, now they can be in their home quietly and learn about it and maybe decide to go forward with it. So what would you say to somebody that is a new shooter that wants to try?
Right. I say the first thing you need to do is get a good safe to store your firearm, properly, and get training and practice. We take it for granted. People take it for granted just because it's a firearm, but at the end of the day, it's for your own safety. Making sure that you clear the firearm properly when you're drawing from the holster if you're concealed carrying, or when you're manipulating the firearm, even in a danger situation around people that you love. Having those safety skills and knowledge is imperative. So I would say just explore it, enjoy it. The shooting, participate in shooting activities and shooting sports. Gun ranges, they have a large variety of activities that you can participate on. In that way, you are, improving your skills and have fun with it too.
And that's just it too, having fun with it.
Yeah.
Because I think the benefit of us being part of Armed Women of America is that we get to see the faces of those that are scared, and they get onto that range and they shoot the firearm for the first time, and they're like, wow, did I do that? And they get excited and they want to come back and they want to shoot more, and they realize,
yes,
scary. It's
fun. The beauty of Armed Women of America, we volunteer. You're familiar with Armed Women, right? It's the national organization. Yeah. So it's what, 6 years now?
Yeah, 6 years. Going on 6 years.
Nice.
Yeah, Kerrie started it 6 years ago in Massachusetts, and the difference between Armed Women of America and helping the women on the range versus being firearm instructors and having a class and seeing that student once and maybe never seeing them again is you get to see the growth of the members of the Armed Women of America, because we meet every month. So for 6 years, once a month, we meet time after time for 6 years. And so we can see these women that first became gun owners 6 years later, they're
become so
shooting.
powerful,
Yes,
powered by
it's
their
it's
fire.
unbelievable.
And some of them become, instead of victims, to become survivors, and we get to see that transformation, and it really is almost overwhelming
Well,
sometimes.
and that's the whole mental aspect of it too. When you come in and you feel, you label yourself as this victim because you've had this trauma. Some of our members, they've been held at gunpoint at ATMs, unbelievable the stuff that these women,
and learning to have that strength, just have that choice, having all dress stop, having a dress, and then look at that purse or that holster and that gun and say, I'm gonna just put it on so I can protect myself.
Yeah.
And having that choice, there's nothing better in life, having the opportunity and that, at least that chance that you can say, I can protect myself.
I am my own first responder. And I think it's really awesome that I'm seeing more and more women standing up and becoming firearm instructors, because this is another form of what firearm ownership looks like. And we soften things up. So when we go to meet politicians, we sit down with them. They don't expect to see somebody like yourself or someone like us or someone like me.
Right.
And they get to understand the importance of it. Putting a firearm on a woman's hip creates an equalizer. And then now they understand the reasons why. So I think what you're doing is amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah. You guys are doing awesome too.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gabby, for joining us. You're so fantastic, so dynamic. We love listening to everything that you're doing. So what do you have planned for 2025? Any goals that are exciting?
I'll keep working on my master's. I'm going to start adding more classes to the roster. I stopped doing classes after COVID and all that, but doing my master's, I realized that I want to hone those skills again as an instructor, because that's at the end of the day what I want to do. Not only be just a regular firearm instructor, but help in a very holistic way as much as I can. So, yeah.
I know we had an hour and we had 2 parts, but I'm telling you right now, we
could
have
keep
to
going.
have her come back
Yeah.
when she gets her master's degree situated and we could see all the other amazing things that she does and has done. We need to have her come back, because I think it really was inspiring to me to listen about the components of being able to handle not only being a firearm instructor, but the mental aspect of things. And I think it kind of brought us back to when we first started, as instructors and helping women that were going through something. So, so thank you for joining us for Sisters in Arms. Greatly appreciate it. If you have any questions, please email us, Sisters in Arms.
Don't call me because my ringer's off.
Sisters in Arms 2022 at gmail.com. Thanks again for joining us. We don't have cups.
We don't have
I know. Keep vigilant. Stay safe. There we go.